Hello and welcome to South Asia Focus. I am Smita Prakash. The Jammu and Kashmir Assembly elections concluded in December 2014. Voters came out in large numbers in this trouble which has witnessed at the end is a hung assembly. To discuss this, we have with us Senior Journalist Iftikhar Gilani, who has reported extensively on Kashmir. But before that, here's a brief report on the assembly elections. Jammu and Kashmir is the northernmost state in India, which has a special status under the Indian constitution that grants it greater autonomy than other states. On the eastern part of the state lies the line of control, which separates it from the Pakistan-controlled part of Kashmir, which is referred to as Azad Kashmir in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir in India. The state of Jammu and Kashmir consists of three regions: Jammu, Ladakh and Kashmir. All three went to polls in December to elect its legislative assembly. However, it was a fractured mandate, with the PDP gaining in one region, the BJP in another, the ruling coalition of NC and Congress having fared very badly. The separatists did not participate in the elections yet again. Thank you very much for speaking with us, Iftikhar Saab. You have reported extensively on Kashmir. Can you tell me how are these elections which were held in December, how are these different from the assembly elections which were held in the previous years?
This is a kind of a watershed in the Kashmir history in terms of these elections, have in the enthusiasm, the participation and more or less the kind of fairness in these elections.
Was this across all the three regions, in Jammu and in Kashmir and in Ladakh?
Exactly. What we see exactly, if you go through the history of elections in Kashmir, I can say that after 83, it was after 87, it was the first normal election. And after 83, it was the first...
What do you mean by normal election?
It was a normal election in terms of the participation of people, in terms of enthusiasm of people, and I can say after 83, it was a kind of an election which threw up a representatives, which threw up a mandate where people exactly had voted, more or less.
Yeah, you know, in the earlier elections, there have always been allegations of rigging, allegations that this is not fair, the selection of candidates, the entire electoral process was always clouded. Now, was there even a whiff of that in this election?
These elections, we didn't had the allegations of coercion, that army didn't went out and asked people to vote forcibly. But yes, then there were some incidents, but they were isolated incidents. More or less, I can definitely say that it was the first normal election after 87.
Right. You know, the separatists did not take part in this assembly election either. They have not taken part in assembly elections. They are not part of the electoral process. Does that reflect in any way that the election was not all encompassing? The result is not a mirror of what people of Jammu and Kashmir want?
I think that after 87, the separatists have not taken part in the election. They have not been the part of the electoral process. Even before that, even if they were not in the part of the electoral process, they have either supported or opposed some groups even before that. And that is what happened in this election as well. Even though they didn't participate in the elections as their own candidate, but in Kashmir, I can say it first, the Kashmir, the polity, it is divided into three camps. One is separatists, other is nationalists, and the Kashmiri nationalists, and another is the unionists. Unionists. So you can say that where unionists represents, it used to be represented by only Congress. Now it has a competitor in Congress, and among these nationalists, it was represented by the National Conference. Now they have a competition in PDP as well. Separatists, except in 87 elections, they were never.
When you say nationalists, you mean Kashmiri nationalists.
Kashmiri
right?
nationalists.
And
yes.
when you mean unionists, those are people who believe in the union with India.
With India, yes, exactly. Because in Kashmiri nationalists also, they say they are not unionists. They are actually anti-Delhi.
The constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir, now was this an issue at all in these elections? Because every party has a different take on this. I mean, the BJP ultra unionists, they believe that it's an arm of India, just the same as any other state in the country. The Jammu and the party, the National Conference of Omar Abdullah, that has a different take on it. The PDP, led by Mufti, which won the election actually, I mean, they also have a different take on this issue. So was this an issue at all in this election for the people of Jammu and Kashmir? Did they vote or not vote a party because of this issue?
The political status of Jammu and Kashmir has never been an issue during elections except in 89 and 96 elections. The first normal election in Kashmir, which took place in 1977 onwards, this was the first normal election. The issue was only on two elections, was in 89 and in 96, where the separatists, yes, definitely they proved their point. But thereafter, it has been an election which has been definitely on the local issues. And these two major political parties of Kashmir, National Conference and the PDP, they are going on the rooftops to say that this election has nothing to do with the overall political status of the Jammu and Kashmir. It is for the local issues, local administrative issues, these elections.
But they said that, but is it true that it's got nothing to do with the assembly election? What about the people of the state? When they cast their vote, did they really not think about the constitutional, or did they say that no, this has got nothing to do with it?
Exactly. There has been this election has been a watershed in the sense that people have participated in the elections.
Right.
And the participation has a different reasons. It was not only the single most reason. There was a reason, at some places, yes, there was a reason that they wanted to show that they are also part of the democratic process as the rest of India. And at some places there is definitely, and the majority of them have, this election has been to host their local MLA and to give a lesson to the local MLA and to choose a representative who represents them actually in the assembly. For
local issues. I get that. There's also this feeling of discomfort now in the rest of India that even after the election there is no government in Jammu and Kashmir. It's slipping into a state of a governor's rule, which is not good for the state. A stable government in Jammu and Kashmir is extremely important. We saw that the state went, the development agenda of the state could get derailed if there is no government soon. So is there the sense of urgency or not among the political parties in Jammu and Kashmir?
That's why I'm saying that this election is a watershed in the history of Jammu and Kashmir. People have voted. Now it is up to the political parties to show some kind of a maturity. And if it doesn't happen, there is a possibility that it may again throw state in the kind of uncertainty if they do not show the kind of a maturity. The kind of unfortunately the mandate is such, and the voting pattern was such, it was totally a polarized voting. But since then it happens almost everywhere in such situations. And if we allow such kind of free, fair and kind of an election and a representative elections to happen in Kashmir quite repeatedly, there will be a situation where there is a chance of reconciliation between the regions.
So there is talk of a kind of a unity government, somewhat like what happened in Afghanistan. There was a limbo and there was that this ought not to happen, so then they got together. But do you see that happening among the political parties? There's such sharp differences. Can they really come together on a common minimum program and move forward and make a unity government?
You see, the majority of the vote in these elections has been against the previous government,
which is the National Conference led by
Congress
Omar Abdullah.
And Congress, both of them,
right, which was a minority
yes,
partner.
The misrule, the way they ruled, the kind of situations which happened in the last 5 years or 6 years, people voted against them. To give them back to the power and make them back to rule the Kashmir, I think it will not be fair. But since the politics and everything is possible in the politics and the kind of a mandate which has come up, it can be a situation where it may help this region not to go in the period of uncertainty once again.
But if you keep the BJP out of the government, that could happen if in the calculations, it would not be fair on the entire region of Jammu, which has voted for the BJP. How can you do that? Then you're talking really about trifurcation.
Exactly, logical alliance which could have happened, that which
Was
were
the PDP
which
and the
which earlier
BJP?
earlier in the pre-election periods which were discussed was between the PDP and the Congress. But the problem has happened with the Congress. Congress has been wiped out from Jammu, which is its own basin where it was actually represented. Because Congress in Kashmir has been a representative of the sentiments of Hindus of Jammu. It's quite very fair to say about the Congress in Kashmir. Congress, if the rest of the India is a different Congress, Congress in Jammu and Kashmir has represented entirely a different point and different electoral strategy. But in these elections, for the first time, there is not a single Hindu MLA of Congress, and all of these Hindu MLAs they lost with convincing margins. So in this situation, if there had been a alliance between Congress and the PDP, there is not even a single person from Jammu who could become a minister. So this is a very tricky situation, and that's why this PDP did not show the kind of enthusiasm to warm up to the Congress.
So how important is it for the PDP to quickly cobble together a coalition and form a government, and how dangerous is it for Jammu and Kashmir not to have a government soon?
First thing is that whatever government comes in Kashmir, it should have a representation from all the three regions. I don't think even of three regions, Kashmir has, if you can have a really closer look at Kashmir, it
So
has.
your ideal government would be a kind of a unity government representing all the political parties?
Ideal government could have been the PDP and the BJP, but the kind of mandate they have, the way they have fought elections, it's very unlikely and very difficult.
Two different poles.
If they come together and they have to convince their own electorate, and it is a very Herculean task to convince their own electorate the kind of ideologies they represent. The PDP, on one hand, it is being seen as a soft separatist. It is being seen as the kind representing the Kashmiri mindset which exists right now today, and
totally isolated from what the Jammu and Ladakh.
And Jammu after 2008 of Amarnath agitation reflects entirely a different mindset. To actually marry these two kind of ideologies seems a very difficult. So if at all, I think if the political agendas of the two political parties, if they give up, if they have a give and take, like the PDP has a major agenda on the Armed Forces Special Powers Act.
Complete revocation of the Armed Forces Special Provision Act, or else a partial one is what the PDP would like.
I think the timeline is not necessarily the complete revocation, but a timeline. Okay, just in the formation of the government within 1 month, it can be revocated from Srinagar, because Srinagar there is no army now. So in next 1 year it will be revocated somewhere else. That can give PDP a kind of a face saver to show its electorate that they have gained something.
What do you think is the time frame? How long before they should or they can come up with a coalition option?
I think the time is running out of them, because the kind of after the floods, they need a government who can rehabilitate people, who can do kind of an situation in Kashmir. It's a kind of a very bad situation. The winters have already stepped in Kashmir, and right now the government is in Jammu. Kashmir is without a government.
See, you also, you reported extensively on Kashmir. You also see the other side of Kashmir, the one which is in Pakistani control, which India refers to as Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and Pakistan refers to it as Azad Kashmir. What about the people there? Have they seen the electoral process which has happened in Kashmir here, and do they have any kind of rights which are similar to what is there in Kashmir?
I think these elections were keenly observed from across the border as well, because we have seen the kind of elections which have happened in Kashmir, right from Constituent Assembly to this phase. Actually there has been a similar kind of an elections in that part of Kashmir as well. There has been, just like here are aberrations, 77, 83, 87, or this election which have seen a free and fair elections. I haven't seen that there also have been some kind of aberrations, but the elections have been like in our part of completely militarized kind of an elections. There is a kind of the time has now come that in the both sides of the Kashmir we have a genuine elections, we have a genuine representatives.
Was it a militarized election? You just said to me that it was a totally non-militarized election in India?
Yes, I mean this election. This was the
earlier one also, isn't it?
I think the earlier one I can only say which was a non-militarized election was 87, and before 83 and 77. There have
and
been
also
quite
the
few
general
elections.
Kashmir has the Kashmiris have voted in the general elections, whereas in POK or Azad
They don't
Kashmir,
have
as they call it, they are not allowed.
They don't
right?
have a representation in the Pakistan National Assembly because Pakistan, as per their own constitution, as per the written constitution, does not have a claim.
So people there have no political rights actually, in actual terms,
Pakistan, as per their own constitution, does not have a claim on the Jammu and Kashmir or the POK. They only refer it as a disputed territory, not they have to claim. But unlike India, India has a claim on, and India takes it as its own constitutional
So
part.
it doesn't get representation anywhere. It's not, nobody really looks out
Exactly.
for Azad Kashmir POK because they have no status, political status either in Pakistan, and nor does India now make a claim anymore, doesn't it?
Because Pakistan only has a trusteeship on the POK, on the Azad Jammu and Kashmir. They don't have a constitutional status in the Azad Kashmir. It is only the trusteeship they have, which has been guaranteed to them by the United Nations.
So yeah, so I'm sure that people there are also looking at elections in Kashmir with great interest, and as are Indians also looking and hoping that some kind of a government comes into formation soon.
No, the time has actually, that's why I'm repeatedly saying that the time has come that across the line of control, we have a kind of this non-militarized elections, and let the people to have a genuine representatives, as we had this in this election, or we had in 877, we had in 83, and let those genuine representatives complete their tenure and do what they can do for the betterment of their own people.
Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.